Humans invest a lot of time and money exploring the unknown. First outer space, then the ocean floor. But there's another frontier we're trying to conquer. Scientists call it the deep frontier. I'm talking about how far down to the Earth's core we've made it so far. During the 60s, humans tried digging the deepest man-made hole on Earth. This took us deep into the Arctic Circle. What later became known as the super deep borehole is also the deepest artificial point on Earth, reaching the depth of 40,230 feet. It took 20 years to drill this far into the Earth's crust, and researchers say this is only about 1/3 of the way through to the mantle. Here's a quick anatomy of our planet. If the Earth is like an onion, the crust is like the thick skin of this onion. This part is only 25 miles thick. Beyond this is the 1,800-mile deep mantle, and after that, right at the center of the Earth, is the core, which is made up of 2 layers, inner and outer. Now, can you guess where on the planet the crust is at its thinnest? On the ocean floor. When American scientists understood that, they started drilling holes on the seabed. This gave way to Project Mohole. It began in 1961, but their technology to drill deep holes on the ocean was really bad. They had to improvise. They installed a system of propellers along the sides of their drill ship to keep it steady over the hole. The main challenge was to drill as vertically as possible. Otherwise, that deep hole would look more like a deep maze. Both the Kola Super Deep Borehole project and the Project Mohole came to an official stop in the years that followed. But hey, humans have built some pretty deep stuff underground. In 1963, a Turkish man took a swing with his sledgehammer to improve his basement and discovered a tunnel. That tunnel entrance led to more openings that connected a multitude of halls and chambers. He didn't know it, but he had discovered Daringo. This once lost city was up to 18 stories tall and 200 feet deep. The city was large enough to host 20,000 people, and it was simply standing beneath Cappadocia in Turkey the whole time. Cappadocia hosts hundreds of subterranean dwellings. 40 of these underground cities are at least 2 stories high, but none of them are as huge as Daringo. There's not a lot of historical accounts of how Daringo was born. Some speculate that the oldest part of the complex was dug about 2000 BCE by the Hittites. The Hittites were an Indo-European civilization who formed one of the first major civilizations of the Bronze Age in West Asia. Scholars think they built this underground city to protect themselves from invasion. Others think it was actually the Christians who built the city in the 1st century CE. They speculate that it could have been constructed to protect people from the intense temperature variations, extreme heat in summer and freezing cold in winter. Geographically, the terrain under Cappadocia is great for building. The rocks are soft, which makes tunneling easier. For that same reason, opening large caves underground is fragile. That's why most chambers have pillars that support them. On the bright side, and we are, none of the floors at Daringo have ever collapsed. The builders of Daringo thought of everything. The city was shut off from the world by huge rocks that hid its entrance. It was ventilated by a total of more than 15,000 shafts, around 10 centimeters wide. This way, they guaranteed enough breathing air in the upper levels in a way that they ended up being used as the living and sleeping quarters. The lower levels of this impressive maze were mainly used for storage. But honestly, they had it all. A room for a wine press, for domestic animals, small religious buildings. They certainly didn't spare any efforts to make that underground city as complete as an above-ground one. Now, speaking of impressive underground stuff, Switzerland has the longest tunnel in the world, built here on the Swiss Alps. This absurdly huge tunnel was built over 8,000 feet below the surface. Check this out. This is what the Gotthard-based tunnel looks like. The first idea to build the tunnel was put forward as early as 1947, but construction only officially began in 1999. It took them years to approve the project and then scout for the perfect location. Even so, The 73 different rock types that compose Massif turned the construction into a real challenge. Some of the rocks were as hard as granite, and others were as soft as sandstone. This meant they needed different approaches and equipment so the whole thing wouldn't crumble down. Overall, they had to excavate about 28 million metric tons of rock to make way for the tunnel. There were many other challenges to build that far into the earth. The deeper into the mountain they got, the hotter the temperatures were. Since there's no natural ventilation, temperatures would get as high as 115 degrees Fahrenheit, making it really hard for workers to endure. The tunnel stretches for 35 miles from one end to the other. During the construction, workers had to use 4 massive tunnel boring machines, aka moles, to penetrate through the massif. Each of these moles was around 1,400 feet long. But that was one of the best things they could do, since these machines limit the disturbance to the surrounding ground and help to produce a smooth tunnel wall. You'd never guess that the world's deepest basement belongs to the Sydney Opera House in Australia. The building goes as deep underground as it grows above ground. But this basement isn't just the Opera House's foundation, it's a parking lot. This unique parking garage penetrates 120 feet underground, or 12 stories deep, while most car parks are only 4 or 5 stories deep. But that's not all that makes it unique. You see, if they decided to build a normal rectangular parking space, this would end up eliminating a bunch of possible parking spaces. And since they wanted to maximize the space they had available, they had to come up with some superb structure. First, they opened up a man-made cavern to make that dream possible. Then they had to come up with a design. That's what led to the donut-shaped cavern, or what engineers call a double helix. This design shocked the engineering community for its innovative approach. But hey, it worked! Today, there is space for over 1,000 cars down there, which seems about right for an opera house. Let's wow once again real quick. Some underground structures may take up to an hour to reach. Take this gold mine in South Africa that lies around 2.5 miles below the surface. Yeah, you may think, hey, it's just a couple of miles, why does it take an hour to get there? But the conditions are hard and it's not for the weak. But Milan Ladina, an Ecuadorian runner, even completed a half marathon there, despite temperatures reaching 104 degrees Fahrenheit, high humidity at 80%, and an atmospheric pressure of 1.4, comparable to what divers experience 5 meters under the sea. Yikes.
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit, about 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree, leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals! These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final dance, the primates decided it was time for a family reunion. They split into two groups, the dry-nosed primates, who became the cool monkeys and apes we know today, and the wet-nosed primates, who went off to become lemurs and aye-ayes, hey-hays. The fun didn't stop there. About 58 million years ago, the dry-nosed primates began their own little mission. One special guest called the Tarsier, arrived on the scene, featuring big eyes that were perfect for late-night shenanigans. This Tarsier took a different path from its primate relatives, embracing its unique niche and evolving separately. To this day, the Tarsier is the only primate that feeds exclusively on meat. These little guys have a taste for insects, small birds, rodents, and even lizards. But that's not all that makes them unique. Their eyes are twice the size of their brains. Also, their heads can do a full 180-degree spin, just like an owl. Because of their features, the Tarsiers are the true kings and queens of the night. With their superpower of ultrasonic tracking, they can spot their prey instantly. Plus, their legs and feet are like springs ready to launch them into action. They've got this special ankle bone called the tarsus, which gives them those epic leaping skills. Hence the name, if you were wondering. But let's leave these little critters to rest and get back to our story, shall we? About 55 million years ago, the Earth cranked up the heat, literally. This sudden hot pod was a bit too much for many deep ocean dwellers and plants to handle, and they bid their farewells. But hey, every goodbye is an opportunity for something new, right? The oceanic mammals known as cetaceans, saw their chance and took it. They splashed into those empty niches, becoming the rulers of the sea. In this category of creatures, you can find the blue whale and the dolphin. A special primate guest made an appearance around 47 million years ago. Scientists now affectionately call the fossil of such a creature Ida. This little wonder caused quite a stir, initially hailed as the missing link in human evolution. But here's the hilarious part. It turned out Ida was not one of us dry-nosed primates, but a cheeky wet-nosed one. Moving forward to 40 million years ago. This is when another big event happened in the primate world. The New World monkeys, our distant cousins, decided to take a different path and branch off from our lineage of Old World monkeys. They packed their bags and set off to conquer South America, where they're still living it up today. What's the difference between the two, you might ask? Well, one crucial thing that sets them apart is the fact that the Old World monkeys had nostrils that pointed downwards. Around 25 million years ago, another troop of apes entered the scene, and these guys had something special, the lack of a tail. These unique creatures would go on to become our closest relatives. We're talking apes and great apes, the cool gang who share a whole lot of genetic similarities with us. The first ape to break free from the monkey madness was the gibbon. About 18 million years ago is when this little acrobat swung into the picture. A few million years later, the great apes made their grand entrance too. Orangutans were the pioneers, venturing into the wilds of southern Asia. We're getting closer and closer to the present. It was 7 million years ago when the great apes took a major fork in the evolutionary road. One path led to our ancestors, the future Homo sapiens, and the other path led to chimpanzees and bonobos. These two primate branches remained united for a few million years before finally going their separate ways. 5.6 million years ago, a game-changing ape called Ardipithecus made its way into our evolutionary history. It had a special talent, bipedalism. That's right, this was one of the first apes to walk on 2 feet, probably making its primate buddies raise an eyebrow or two. The real showstoppers, however, arrived around 4 million years ago, the Australopithecus crew. These were the earliest members of the Hominina hominina subtribe, our tribe. What made them so special? Well, probably the fact that they brought some serious tools to the game. Stone tools, to be precise. It seems that at some point in their evolution, these clever primates started using stones to make their lives easier. Now here comes a crucial turning point in our story. About 2 million years ago, our ancestors faced a food shortage. Survival of the fittest was the name of the game, and two strategies emerged. Group 1 went for stronger jaws, allowing them to chomp on tough foods like nuts. Group 2 had a different idea. They opted for weaker jaws, but bigger brains. They wanted access to a wider range of food options. Obviously, the bigger-brained group took the prize. And here's where our gang comes into play. Around 2.5 million years ago, a type of primate also known as Handyman made its mark on history. These clever beings had larger brains and knew how to put those neurons to good use. About 1.9 million years ago, a new star emerged, Homo erectus. These creatures not only walked upright, but also had brains that were almost twice the size of the Handyman's. They took the world by surprise, becoming the first of our direct ancestors to venture out of the African continent. They even knew how to tame fire. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the world witnessed a culinary revolution. The earliest evidence of cooking appeared. And around 500,000 years ago, our ancestors decided it was time to become a bit more fashionable, donning the first evidence of clothing. Our very own species came to be just 300,000 years ago. Told you we were late to the party. But the world was never the same after the appearance of Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern humans. Alongside our other relatives, we emerged, ready to conquer the world with our innovative minds and complex societies. The exact path of our evolution remains a bit of a mystery. But what we do know for sure is that Neanderthals joined the party around at some point too. As Homo sapiens flourished, so did our capacity for language. Modern speech is believed to have emerged almost hand in hand with our species. We started expressing ourselves, sharing stories, and shaping the world with our words. So, there you have it. It took 13.8 billion years of cosmic history for humans to make their entrance. Think about it. 99.998% of the time since the Big Bang, we weren't even around. Our species, Homo sapiens, is the toddler of the Earth's family, existing for just the tiniest fraction of the universe's timeline. Yet, in this blink of an eye, we've managed to unravel the entire story that led to our existence. The story won't end with us. It's an ongoing saga, still being written with every passing moment.
Throughout time, scientists have managed to uncover about 6,000 early human fossils, ranging from skulls to teeth. For some of these fossils, it was a breeze. Researchers could instantly identify them as belonging to, say, the Neanderthals. However, when it came to others, things got a bit trickier. Some fossils just didn't fit into any existing categories. So, what categories of prehistoric humans do we actually know about? Well, up until recently, we recognized 8 different species of early humans. One of these is Homo habilis, which means handyman. You'll recall that Homo is Latin for human. They resembled regular primates, but were pivotal in our evolution. They were the first to create stone tools, which significantly aided their daily activities, such as butchering. Next up, we have Homo rudolfensis. These guys were larger than Homo habilis and boasted bigger brains, but they were still quite distant from modern humans. For example, even though the neurological structure of their brains was becoming more complex, they were probably not capable of using any form of actual spoken language. Then came Homo erectus, the first to walk upright, followed by Homo antecessor, which is considered the last common ancestor of modern humans and Neanderthals, along with a host of other Homo species. Meanwhile, we're still piecing together the story of the enigmatic Denisovans. Our knowledge of Homo naledi is pretty limited too, since it was only discovered in 2013, and it is species number 8. Interestingly, Naledi means star in the Sotho language because they were found in a cave called Rising Star. Scientists were taken aback by them. Everything suggested they were around 2 million years old. But after closer examination and some tests, it turns out that the Naledi species is much younger, between 236 and 335,000 years old. Their hands were adapted to making tools, yet no tools have been found nearby. Long story short, they're a puzzling species, and there's still so much more to learn about them. So even though today we have only one human species on our planet, Homo sapiens, we continue to discover ancient species that are long gone. Now you might wonder why researchers study these extinct species. The truth is, they need this knowledge to piece together the intricate narrative of our prehistoric past. In 2024, a significant discovery emerged, the 9th human species, named Homo giluensis, which translates to large-headed. Researchers suggest that this species hunted wild horses, crafted stone tools, and processed animal hides to survive harsh winters. A researcher from the University of Hawaii noted that the discovery of this potential new species came about while his team was developing a novel method for classifying fossil evidence. Interestingly, one potential representative of Homo giluensis isn't entirely new to science. The Denisovans, first identified in 2010 through DNA analysis of a finger bone found in Siberia, have yet to be classified as a distinct species. Some scientists propose that they may actually belong to this newly identified group. These big-headed individuals could help shed light on the long-standing mysteries surrounding these hominin fossils, which have puzzled researchers due to their mixed characteristics of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. You see, sometimes it's tough to call a spade when you don't even know what a spade looks like. You get the idea? Many unsolved mysteries linger simply because scientists haven't had this crucial, big-headed piece of the puzzle. So theoretically, we modern humans could also be considered a bit of Homo giluensis. You don't believe me? Well, watch this. We need to consider two key facts for this equation. First, there are the Denisovans, a group we might refer to as Homo giluensis from a scientific perspective. Yeah, this is just a theory proposed by some researchers, but let's roll with it for now and pretend it's a fact. Second, it's important to know that the Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of modern-day Melanesians. These folks inhabit areas ranging from New Guinea to the Fiji Islands and carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. Now, you might not personally have those genes, unless you've been tested, of course, but the key takeaway here is that there are modern humans today who share genetic links with the Denisovans, or Homo giluensis, or big heads if you prefer. Now, that all sounds pretty plausible. Let's unpack step by step how it happened. Researchers have uncovered this type of ancient human, known as the Denisovans, based on skeletal remains found in Siberia. These ancient humans coexisted and interbred with modern humans, adding yet another layer to our understanding of human evolution. Named after the Siberian caves where their fossils were discovered, the Denisovans are believed to have roamed widely across Eurasia. Evidence indicates that the Denisovans lived alongside Neanderthals and interacted with early Homo sapiens, possibly around 50,000 years ago. A team of scientists successfully sequenced a complete genome from these ancient hominins using nuclear DNA extracted from a finger bone. This discovery reveals that at least 4 distinct human groups existed during the time when anatomically modern humans began migrating out of Africa. Alongside modern humans and Neanderthals, we now have to consider the Denisovans and another small human species from Indonesia, often referred to as the Hobbit, when discussing our evolutionary history. One intriguing question that arises is why Denisovan genes are predominantly found in modern Melanesians, yet absent from other Eurasian populations. Remember that 4 to 6%? One hypothesis suggests that interactions between the Denisovans and early modern humans were limited and brief, especially as humans migrated throughout Southeast Asia into Melanesia. Scientists speculate that only a small number of the Denisovans may have interbred with a larger group of modern humans. This could explain how the Denisovan genes made their way into the gene pool despite the likelihood of infrequent encounters. Anyway, The more scientists dig into our past, the more fascinating things they uncover about our ancestors. Take Neanderthals, for example. Did you know these guys were responsible for creating the very first piece of art ever? I had no idea. But a 2018 study of ancient cave art in Spain revealed what are now considered the oldest known artistic creations. We used to think Neanderthals lacked the cognitive skills needed for art, but it turns out they were actual art pioneers. Not only did they create art, but they also seem to have invented hashtags thousands of years before Chris Messina did it in 2007. Right, I'm kidding, but you'll soon get why I mention hashtags. The artworks found in several caves in Spain include simple hand stencils, a ladder-like drawing, and various other markings. Until recently, these prehistoric pieces were believed to have been made by early humans. But new testing methods suggest they're much older than we thought. Above all, the earliest recognized Neanderthal artwork, which looks like a hashtag, was discovered in Gibraltar back in 2014. To determine the age of these artworks, scientists employed advanced dating techniques using eHarmony and Match.com. Oops, wait a minute, wrong dating techniques. They actually used uranium and thorium radioisotopes instead of the traditional carbon dating. Once the necessary tests were completed, they confirmed the art was approximately 65,000 years old, 15,000 years older than the previously oldest known art from Indonesia. At that time, the only species around were Neanderthals, so it's safe to say they were behind these creations. Modern humans didn't arrive in Spain until about 20,000 years later. Hey, it was a long commute. That rules them out as the hashtag creators. The hand stencil was likely created intentionally, with the artist preparing the pigment and applying it over their hand. Plus, the caves also contain a collection of painted seashells that are an astonishing 115,000 years old. Some of these shells have been drilled, suggesting they might have been used as jewelry. Some specialists argue that the fact Neanderthals created art hints that they might have also had some form of spoken language. So maybe it's time we fully embrace Neanderthals as part of our lineage. They're humans too, just a different branch of our family tree. While these findings are intriguing, some experts remain skeptical about the new dating methods, claiming they're not entirely convinced. Hey, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Whoa, there could have been more human species throughout history than we used to think. In one place in East China, Hualongdong, scientists found the remains of a human who lived around 300,000 years ago. They found a jawbone and parts of the skull. They carefully studied these bones to compare them with the bones of other ancient and modern humans. The remains themselves weren't that unusual. We know our human family is really diverse and has been around for millions of years. You know our ancient relative called Australopithecus, right? These fellas lived in different parts of Africa, and they were known for walking on two legs, just like modern humans. But their brains and some other parts of their bodies made them more similar to apes. Their teeth are a good example of how they were like a mix of apes and modern humans. Their canine teeth were smaller than those of apes, but their back teeth were still larger than ours. There were different types of them. You can recognize some Paranthropus because of their big jaws and teeth. One of the most famous fossils of Australopithecus is Lucy, a lady that's about 3.2 million years old. She was found in Ethiopia. So, we know that our family got pretty big from that point, or probably even before it. But it's always great to welcome some new members, which seemed to be the case with this new discovery. Some parts of these bones look similar to the bones of ancient humans, while other parts look more like the bones modern humans have. For example, the person whose bones they found didn't have a real chin. That means we can't put it in any of the groups we know of, like Neanderthals, or maybe even Homo sapiens. So, might we be missing a branch from the human family tree, or an important step in our evolution? What we're looking at here could be some mix between the creatures that became modern humans like us and the ones that turned into what we today know as Denisovans. It takes time to figure it all out, though. We hadn't known much about Denisovans either until we found some of their bones in a cave in the mountains. These bones are really rare, and we only had a few pieces to analyze, but their genes told us a lot more about their past than their fossils. Different kinds of humans lived on this planet, but through time, they spread around. One group started living in Africa. Those are our kind, Homo sapiens. Another group went to Europe. That's how we got Neanderthals. But some of these ancient human groups moved all the way to Asia. That's where we can trace a new interesting kind, Denisovans. It seems they're cousins to both modern humans and Neanderthals. The three species actually shared a common ancestor about 765,000 years ago. It's still not clear why Neanderthals and Denisovans took different paths, but one theory says that it was mostly because the Arctic ice sheet expanded southward all the way to the Black Sea, cutting off Europe from Asia. Life, or better yet, the planet, kept them separated for a very long time. Plus, they kept changing places where they lived all the time, always looking for something better, like every other human species before and after them. But this didn't last forever. Scientists found genes from two groups of Denisovans, one in mainland Asia and the other in a place called Melanesia. So not only did they have different groups within their populations, but it also seems that after thousands and thousands of years of developing independently, the members of these three populations, Neanderthal, Denisovans, and modern humans, somehow met again and spread all across the land. 5% of the Denisovan genome lives on, not in the area where scientists found their bones, but in people that live thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Papua New Guinea. But scientists believe that the cave where they found the remains of Denisovans might be as far north as they had lived. It would have been way too cold for them to survive if they had gone further north. From there, they traveled as far south as Indonesia. This was possible because, during their time, sea levels were lower than today. So Indonesia was connected to mainland Asia. But they probably didn't make it to Australia since it was still separated by water. These three groups mixed together too. Scientists have found a bone of a girl who had a Neanderthal mom and a Denisovan dad. It's the only first-generation hybrid human we've discovered. She even got a cool nickname, Denny. One of the mysteries about Denisovans is how they disappeared. Maybe they mixed so much with other humans that they just blended in. Or it's possible that modern humans' ancestors were stronger, had better tools, or even brought some diseases that didn't affect them, but affect Denisovans. Climate and where they lived might have also played a role. Denisovans lived in a wide range of environments, from cold parts of Asia to tropical Indonesia. Climate changes and the challenges of different habitats might have been really difficult to survive. But it's hard to draw strict lines in our family tree. We're still relatively new at learning about it anyway. Who knows how many new members we are about to discover? Half a century ago, a team of scientists had an idea that a collection of fossils they found at the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania were actually the remains of some new human species. Yup, that was the time when we welcomed Homo habilis into the family. It was a big discovery at that time since people mostly believed that the story of our evolution had been really simple. First, there were Australopiths that looked like apes. After them, there was Homo erectus, the upright man. They most likely lived in Africa around 2 million years ago, but also expanded really quickly across Eurasia. It was the first human species that we know about to have traveled such long distances to find a better place for life. They looked and behaved like humans. Plus, they were probably the first of our ancient ancestors who learned how to deal with fire. Maybe they were the first to cook food as well, and that's what we're definitely thankful for. Cooking food was an innovation that made the human diet more nutritive, and we could grow bigger and smarter brains. So, yeah, Homo habilis made things more complicated. They could walk on two legs, but they could also be better at climbing trees than walking on the ground like us. Plus, their brains were smaller than what a human should probably have. At first, it seemed these fossils could be from a completely different side of the family, related to other creatures, Australopithecus africanus, that looked like apes. But more and more digging showed that even though its jaws and teeth were similar, Homo habilis was still bigger and a bit different. The name means handy man, because they were probably able to make and use simple tools. Searching for more fossils in Africa wasn't easy because a team of researchers had to deal with wild animals and tough conditions all the time. But eventually, they managed to find some teeth and a strange skull that was, again, something different from the ancestors we knew about. The teeth were really big, so this new fella got the nickname of Nutcracker Man. For a long time, everyone believed this kind had evolved to eat hard foods. But the fossil teeth didn't show much damage, so they might have been eating food that was softer than we thought. This finding might help us understand how our teeth have been evolving through time, too. And right there, in the same layers of soil where Nutcracker Man was lying, they found ancient stone tools. At first they thought those had belonged to Nutcracker, but as they kept digging, they found more fossils that didn't match Nutcracker Man. It means that someone else must be the real tool maker. But that's another story for another time.
Now, we wouldn't call this island mystical unless there were tales of giants living here. The island of Gozo in Malta is the backdrop of an ancient legend. Malta is an island country located in the Mediterranean Sea, just south of Europe. It's a very strategically located archipelago. Throughout history, it was ruled by many different societies, such as the Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, and Carthaginians. One cold night, thousands of years ago, a farmer noticed the sky turn orange, then red, when he heard a loud thump. Although the ground seemed to be moving, this wasn't an earthquake. When he looked toward the woods, he saw a giant silhouette, taller than the trees. As he fearfully approached, he realized it was a woman. A giant woman. She introduced herself as Sansuna. Unlike the terrible giants of many tales, Sansuna didn't want to exterminate the human race. She was loving and caring. She told the farmer that she and her people could help protect their land from invaders. The locals were pretty interested in this offer. Since Malta is located in an important commercial route, it was constantly being invaded. The story says that Sansuna settled in Malta, and sooner rather than later, she was moving things around. And when I say things, I mean monoliths. Sansuna carried huge stones on her shoulder to build a magnificent temple called Gigantia, which means place of giants. She even did this while holding her half-giant, half-human kid on the other shoulder. Some say Sansuna lived exclusively on beans and honey, although others replaced honey with water. The funniest bit here is that Malta is the 10th smallest country in the world, but it somehow managed to host giants. Hey, go figure. The temple looked like a giant game of Tetris, with some stones weighing as much as 20 elephants. Some of these monolithic rocks are so heavy, scholars guess it would take 50 men working together to lift just one stone. Now, as much as this is entertaining, humans never proved giants were real, so this story couldn't be true. There's a brief mention of a species of giants called the Nephilim in some ancient texts. The Nephilims would have been terrible giants that wreaked havoc on the earth and only survived until the Great Flood. But nobody ever found real proof of this species really existing on Earth, until this came along. The world of Maltese archaeology unearthed quite a few shocking things in the past years. One of them are known as the hypogeum skulls. Hypogeum is the Greek word for underground, and this incredible site was discovered in the first decade of the 20th century. Back then, Malta's National Museum director received an important phone call. Someone had accidentally dug some impressive bones and asked him to come check it out. The hypogeum looked like an underground city, filled with mazes and rooms that stretched along multiple floors. They were all made with similar limestones as the Maltese temples above ground. The hypogeum was filled with important relics and artifacts. Scientists quickly understood that the hypogeum was built as a type of final resting place for locals. So, along with skulls, they found a lot of bones and skeletons. One of these artifacts were skulls, but these weren't regular human skulls. Rather, they were of the elongated type. To make matters worse, these skulls were hidden from the public for years. People started to talk and created a bunch of theories behind it. The truth is that this discovery was a turning point for Maltese archaeology, although scientists didn't know what to do with it. Some wondered if these skulls were natural or manipulated, since they knew some cultures in the world used head binds to alter their skulls. Other scientists threw in the hypothesis of little gray people or even the legendary giants. Some say that the elongated skulls could have been sculptures that worshipped otherworldly deities. There was no way to confirm any of these theories. So the question remained: who were the builders of Malta's megalithic temples? Now let's take a look at what scientists know. The Maltese megalithic temples have been standing strong since 3500 BCE, which is even older than the pyramids of Egypt. The main dilemma here is that these temples were built even before we invented writing, yet they required advanced technological skills to exist. The Gigantea Temple seems too absurd to have been built by humans. The South Temple has a corridor with 4 oval rooms on the sides, looking like a big shamrock leaf. In one of these rooms, scientists found altars decorated with spiral patterns. It looked like an altar of some sort, indicating early Maltese people used them for ritualistic purposes. The North Temple is similar but smaller, with a very low entrance that makes people crouch down to get inside. You get it? You need to bow down to their deities in order to get into this sacred place. I mean, one can't help but wonder about the secret reasons these ancient builders had to build such a huge temple. I'm thinking they probably cast one of Daenerys' dragons to move the monoliths around. Yeah, I'm joking here. But hey, remember the entrance to King's Landing? Yup, the series used the Medina Gates in Malta as the exterior of King's Landing during Episode 3 of Season 1. Anyways, back to the giants. The ritualistic theory of the whole thing won a few points when archaeologists uncovered these mysterious figures. They're popularly known as fat ladies. These tiny statues have round bodies and faces that show how much they enjoyed life. They kind of look like a miniature Sunsana, the giantess we talked about. Scientists believe these were statues that celebrated well-being and prosperity. It does prove that the people of the time had advanced craftsmanship skills, and they were pretty intentional with their constructions and art manifestations. One of these statues is known as the Sleeping Lady. This Neolithic piece of art depicts the figure of a large woman lying on her side sleeping. After studying it deeper, scientists guessed this statue was meant to represent the Great Reaper. It was found in the hypogeum, which we now know was a huge resting place. This specific statue is different from all the other fat ladies, starting with the hair and the embroidered skirt. Then there's this statue. This is supposed to represent an 8-foot-tall woman and the rim of her skirt. She was discovered in the most unusual of ways. A farmer was trying to plow his field, but he kept hitting large blocks of stone. All the way back in 1915, the farmer called Malta's National Museum director and asked him to come check it out. Some think this is all the proof you need to confirm that Sunsana was real. Others aren't all that sure. But that's not all. The place where this giant statue was buried revealed one of Malta's most impressive archaeological sites, the Tarsian temples. The temples were made from limestone blocks. Some are 20 feet tall and weigh around 20 tons. Zamet, the museum director, kept digging and discovered multiple sites made of megalithic stones. All of them supposedly built by Stone Age farmers, all stranded on a remote island in the Mediterranean Sea thousands of years ago. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, look at these temples in Manidra. This is probably the world's earliest calendar. On the equinoxes, the sun passes directly through the main doorway, straight down the central axis. On the solstices, there are 2 superb variations. During the summer solstice, the rays fall on the edge of the megalith to the left of the doorway, and during the winter, the rays fall to the right side of the doorway. It's astronomical precision at its finest. And what about the structures in the Hall Tarsian that we've already talked about? This complex is the oldest one in all of Malta. It was built with the purpose of doing animal offerings to deities. Scientists confirmed this by unearthing numerous animal bones buried in the soil. They also found a great collection of spirals, indicating that the locals also used this temple for ritualistic purposes. Overall, there are 7 megalithic temples in Malta, each more impressive than the other. Scholars keep on digging to see if they can uncover the truth, much like researchers do with the pyramids of Egypt, the lost Mayan cities in the Americas, and other sites. If you walk through this small stone doorway in Hierapolis, Turkey, you might never come back alive. Back in ancient times, people thought it was some sort of portal to the underworld. Romans would go in carrying perfectly healthy bulls, but after a few minutes, they would watch these animals collapse as if hit by some mysterious force. But what's even weirder is that nothing happened to people. They could walk in and out just fine. Now, recent studies might have an answer for these eerie happenings, and it all has to do with people's heights. The gate, known as Plutonium, named after Pluto, the deity of the underworld, is a stone doorway leading to a small 32-square-foot cave. But the real danger is what is going on beneath it. Hierapolis is a super active geological area, and there's a big crack under the city that constantly emits volcanic carbon dioxide, which comes up as a visible mist. During the day, the sun dissipates the gas. At night, the gas forms some kind of a carbon dioxide lake on the sheltered arena floor. At dawn, you need to get out of there before it's too late. This whole place can turn particularly life-threatening right before the sun rises, when the carbon dioxide concentration, about 15 inches above the arena floor, reaches 35%. That means birds, bulls, and even humans can suffocate and pass away in just a couple of minutes. But there is a scientific reason that explains how Romans could get out of there unharmed. The carbon dioxide concentration drops quickly with height, so animals perished while their handlers, being taller and standing up, could walk out and breathe safely. Most people can't stay inside the Bagarn fort after sunset. This 16th century fort, located about 146 miles from Delhi, is known as one of the most haunted places in India. During the day, the area is bustling with visitors who can walk through the main gate of this once grand fort city and check out the ruins of temples and palaces. But they will also see this big sign at the gate that dramatically warns everybody that all access is strictly forbidden after dark. That's probably because at night, according to locals, women can be heard screaming and crying in that place, along with the sounds of bangles breaking and strange music. Others have reported seeing shadowy figures and flashing lights among the ruins, or even smelling a strange perfume floating around. Yawata no Yabushirasu is one of Japan's most restricted forests, located in Ichikawa. The forest itself is a small area, covering just a little more than 40 square yards, and it is mostly a thick patch of mosu bamboo. Its location next to a parking lot and modern buildings makes it seem less intimidating, but don't be mistaken by its appearance. Since at least the 19th century, people have said that anyone who enters this forest is bound to disappear and never be seen again. So, as soon as you arrive, a sign near the forest tells you about its history and the curse believed to be linked to it. Some rumors suggest the creepy presence of an ancient samurai lord walking around. Other legends say that the forest hides a bottomless pit filled with poisonous gas. Whether these stories are true or not, today, the area is enclosed by stone walls, and entry is still strictly prohibited. In a valley called the Dark Entry Forest in Connecticut, you will find Dudleytown, but you definitely shouldn't go inside. Not only has the land been private property since the 1920s, but it is also known as one of the spookiest places on Earth. This place was first settled in the early 1740s, and many of the original settlers were from the Dudley family. That's why it's called Dudleytown. There's a local rumor that the town's founders were descended from Edmund Dudley, an English nobleman who lost his life for treason. The legend says this curse followed the Dudley family all the way across the Atlantic to America, and their misfortune is said to be responsible for crop failures, mental problems, and several tragic incidents in the village. Again, it is all just rumors, since historians haven't found any real evidence to support these claims. Still, the pitch-black surroundings and the eerie Blair Witch Project vibe going on in that place fueled ghost stories in the 1980s. This led to many cases of vandalism in the following decade, and because of that, the landowners closed the area to the public. This old abandoned building used to be the fancy palace of King Farouk's family, who was the penultimate king of Egypt back in 1936. After his family members passed away, the palace was turned into a morgue. Locals say that today, the whole place is super creepy and off-limits. Some people have reported seeing light bulbs flicker and shadows move around, making strange noises. Once, a group of kids allegedly went inside and totally freaked out when they found all the doors had suddenly disappeared, leaving them in complete darkness. They had no choice but to start screaming for help. This Hawaiian island has been off-limits to people for over a century. It's called Ni'iau and is the smallest inhabited island in Hawaii, covering around 69.5 square miles. It has around 84 residents. The island doesn't have cell phone service, paved roads, or power lines, just solar panels for electricity. A single family has privately owned the island since 1864, when a Scottish farmer bought it for $10,000, which would be around $250,000 today. The island has stayed in the family, passing down to its descendants, the Robinsons. They have kept it private ever since, so access is highly restricted and basically by invitation only. The Erdstall tunnels are a network of about 2,000 mysterious underground passageways mainly found in Central Europe, especially in Austria and Bavaria. These tunnels are usually narrow and cramped, often just wide enough for one person to squeeze through at a time, and they are believed to date back to the Middle Ages, as far back as the 12th century. What's really puzzling about these tunnels is their purpose. Despite a lot of research, nobody really knows why they were built. There is a theory that they were used for storage, but since many of them are below the waterline and occasionally get filled with water, that doesn't seem very practical. These tunnels have very light, almost claustrophobic sections and sudden drops, which doesn't seem practical for other straightforward uses like escape routes, hiding places, or even spiritual purposes. To make things even more mysterious, there is a complete lack of artifacts, which makes it even harder for researchers to figure out what these tunnels were really for. Since 2019, adventurous people can get arrested if they try to climb this rock. Uluru, also known as Ayers Rock, has been off-limits because it is now considered a sacred site for local communities. But the fact that it is also extremely dangerous probably played a big role in the decision to close it off to visitors. This rock is 1,142 feet high, which is about the height of an 80-story building. The climb to the summit can be very slippery, and high temperatures, which can hit 116 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, have led to people passing away from dehydration and heat-related issues. Something even creepier happens at the top of the rock right after storms. When it rains, small tadpole-like crustaceans called shield shrimp hatch in temporary waterholes and rock pools on top of Uluru. These extraterrestrial-looking creatures are about 3 inches long, and they spread their super-resilient eggs everywhere. When enough summer rain comes, they hatch and go wild, feeding on microorganisms and bacteria in the water. How these strange creatures end up in the fleeting pools on top of Uluru is still unclear, but the most likely explanation is that their eggs might travel there with the wind.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama. But instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop Brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on trade goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
The Sahara Desert is like a Mad Max movie. Scorching heat, endless dunes, and an overall barren wasteland. A place where no one could live, right? Well, forget all you know about it, because 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was a lush paradise of grasslands, lakes, and rivers, and the home of a ghost civilization that vanished without a trace. Our tale begins in the 1930s, when a Hungarian explorer stumbled upon a cave in the middle of the Sahara. Inside, he found something bizarre: ancient rock paintings of people swimming in a lake, surrounded by giraffes, hippos, and crocodiles. At the time, everybody shrugged it off as some symbolic depiction of the afterlife, because, really, who would imagine a lake in the Sahara? Well, fast forward some 70 years later, when a group of archaeologists made a discovery that flipped the script. In a rock shelter in Libya, they unearthed 15 mummies, along with baskets, ceramic pots, and other everyday items. This may look like prehistoric junk to most people, but to archaeologists, it was like uncovering a key piece of evidence. Those people weren't just passing through, they lived here. You see, those weren't just any mummies. They were some of the oldest naturally mummified humans ever found, dating back over 7,000 years. Take that, Egypt. 2 of them still had readable DNA, preserved thanks to a rare natural mummification process, almost a miracle considering the Sahara's climate's ability to turn everything into, well, beef jerky. Scientists struggled to understand where those mummies came from for a while, because the mitochondrial DNA they recovered was not helpful at all. But thanks to scientific progress, they eventually managed to do a full genome analysis that revealed some weird secrets. Those people belonged to a human lineage that was completely unknown, and they lived isolated from the rest of humanity for thousands of years. For decades, researchers assumed that the place where they lived, the Green Sahara, was like a prehistoric highway, a lush corridor that humans and animals used to migrate between sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean. But the mummies demolished that theory, like a hippo sitting on a sandcastle. Their DNA showed zero genetic mixing with sub-Saharan and Eurasian migrants, keeping their genes pure for 7,000 years. Their closest genetic relatives weren't their neighbors living right below the famous desert, but some ancient hunter-gatherers from Morocco, and even some guys that lived in the Czech Republic, when it wasn't even a country yet, 50,000 years ago. We're not out of the woods yet, because those mummies also carried some teeny-tiny traces of Neanderthal DNA, just 10% of the amount found in modern Eurasians. Now, if you paid attention in school, then you know that Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia, and early humans only mixed with them after migrating out of Africa. But those Green Sahara folks never left Africa. So how did they get Neanderthal genes? The leading theory is that their ancestors mingled with Neanderthals in North Africa 50,000 years ago before settling in the Sahara and cutting off contact with the outside world. Archaeologists also found cattle bones and tools made of stone and wood at that rock shelter, proving that those people led a thriving pastoral lifestyle. This discovery made scientists scratch their heads for a while because, you see, animal domestication was not developed in Africa. So how did they learn it if they never mingled with anyone? Did they have ancient YouTube tutorials? Probably not. The researchers believe they must have traded knowledge with neighboring groups, but just knowledge, no saliva. It's almost too hard to believe that no outsiders mixed with them. After all, who wouldn't want to live in a thriving civilization in the middle of a green paradise, drinking milk, eating meat, and even using animal blood as a protein source? Ooh, yummy. They didn't have to hunt for every meal, thanks to their livestock, and the abundant water made life pretty sweet. And yet, they never married outsiders. Why? Maybe it was a cultural choice to never date outside their own group. Or maybe the landscape itself kept them isolated. This is where scientists place their bets. They believe that the dense forests and rivers that existed in the Green Sahara acted like nature's no trespassing sign, creating a geographical barrier that isolates animals, plants, and whole societies. This isolation is the reason why their genes were so unique. These guys weren't swapping spit with anyone else. But this genetic time capsule almost didn't survive. For most of the last ice age, the Sahara was even harsher than today, a true dead zone where humans couldn't survive. 70,000 years ago, even the toughest people disappeared, retreating to the Nile Valley and the Mediterranean coast. Why? Because Earth was a climate bully. Massive glaciers stole all the moisture, weakening monsoons until rain clouds barely reached North Africa. Then came the knockout punches. Armadas of icebergs flooded the North Atlantic, triggering devastating droughts each time. This was the Sahara's ultimate keep-out era. Now, you're probably wondering how in the world the Sahara turned green after all this, and then went back to being a desert again. Well, it all started 15,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, when Earth was shaking off the last ice age. Our planet's axis was a bit wobbly, and because of that, the northern hemisphere got closer to the sun, getting extra sunlight and heat. This eternal summer turned North Africa into a giant moisture magnet, pulling water from the Atlantic and making it all rain down on the Sahara. The result of this ridiculous amount of rain was a lush savanna, complete with lakes the size of small countries. But the African humid period was not just a one-time miracle. The truth is, this eternal on and off switch between green and desert happened to the Sahara more than 230 times since the desert was born. During one of these events, the Sahara even expanded, getting bigger than it is today. So when the Green Sahara showed up, you can bet it brought the ultimate ecosystem glow-up. This wasn't just a light dusting of grass. We're talking full makeover. The transformation was so complete, it even reshaped animal populations. Cheetahs suddenly struggled with the new prey dynamics, while rodents like the multi-mammate mouse thrive in the suddenly abundant grasslands. But don't pack your prehistoric swim trunks just yet. This paradise had teeth. The Sahara was an ecological maze of crocodile-infested rivers, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and big cats lurking in the tall grass. Crossing it would have been like playing a real-life game of Hungry Hungry Hippos. This is probably why more groups didn't settle permanently. The Sahara's climate cycled between wet and dry every 20,000 years, hardly a stable zip code. For most ancient people, it was smarter to treat the Green Sahara like an all-you-can-eat buffet, grab resources and leave before the desert returned. Still, this Green Sahara period lasted for 10,000 years, giving our mystery shepherds plenty of time to thrive. But around 5,000 years ago, Earth's axis shifted again, the rains moved away, and the Sahara dried up faster than a puddle in July. As the desert returned, the shepherds from the Green Sahara had no choice but to pack up their livestock and leave. Some researchers believe they migrated toward the Nile, laying the groundwork for ancient Egypt, so I guess their legacy lives on. Besides, their pure lineage may be extinct by now, but some faint genes of the mummies can still be found in the people that live in North Africa today. But the introvert mummies were not the only ones using the Green Sahara as an Airbnb. They actually had neighbors just around the corner, in a lakeside village in Niger to be exact. Those people thrived for 5,000 years and left behind the oldest Sahara Desert cemetery, including a man buried in a turtle shell, a grinning Halloween man with filed teeth, and a heartbreaking family embrace frozen in time, victims of the very waters that sustained them. Eventually, those people disappeared too, just like it happened to our antisocial friends. This proves that this desert outsmarts everyone, with a landscape that gives paradise with one hand and takes it away with the other.
Deep inside the heart of the Amazon rainforest lies a cave so massive, it defies logic. Stretching for 2,000 feet, this tunnel is so big a human could easily walk around inside of it. Its walls are etched with deep, mysterious claw marks. But this is just one of many. If you travel to the south of Brazil, you'll stumble upon over 1,500 similar caves, ranging from modest tiny burrows to massive passageways. These are not your average spooky, bat-filled caverns. They're what researchers call paleo burrows, also known as ancient underground structures dug by creatures so colossal they make modern elephants look small. Whatever creature dug those tunnels displaced 800 elephants worth of dirt. I know, it still looks like a normal cave, but experts noticed this one was special because the walls were too neat and rounded, and the floor was too smooth. Besides, no water or erosion leaves such signs of serious digging power. These Brazilian caves are the largest geological records of animal activity on the planet. It's like stumbling into a prehistoric house made by creatures the size of cars. To unlock this mystery, researchers analyzed the scratch marks on the walls and realized they had probably been made by giant ground sloths, a species called valgipes, which could weigh nearly 9,000 pounds and eat your average annual menu in about 3 days. Despite being huge, these animals were not earthbenders. They had to work in groups if they wanted to dig such long tunnels. This is why scientists believe many sloths shared the same tunnel and dug it together. Even some giant armadillos may have helped with the digging. After all, they were ridiculously skilled excavators and lived there too. Okay, but why would a giant sloth or armadillo need a 2,000-foot-long underground lair? Great question. And the truth is, scientists aren't totally sure. It doesn't make sense for them to dig tunnels this massive just to escape predators, especially since the tunnels were big enough for a saber-toothed tiger to crawl in, for example. So, unless they installed prehistoric security systems, this theory has holes. Haha, pun intended. The best bet is probably climate. Back then, everything was drier and colder, and some species of giant sloths were living their best lives back when Earth was transitioning between cold and warmer periods. Their big bodies usually protected these animals from temperature changes, but drastic fluctuations probably made them hide in order to survive. Besides, just like modern sloths, giant sloths probably had a hard time maintaining their body temperature, and going underground for a while is a great way to protect your babies and save some energy. After all, the bigger you are, the more energy you spend. Some scientists believe these tunnels might have had rotating tenants. One sloth moves in, digs a bit, leaves some scratch marks, moves out. And sometime later, another one crashes there and adds its own decor touches. A hostel for ancient megafauna. All evidence points to a more timeshare situation than a prehistoric private property. After all, these creatures weren't exactly social butterflies. Most sloths and armadillos usually keep things strictly one-on-one, just mom and baby. Yeah, dad sloth stuck around only for the good part. But you probably noticed one tiny detail here. These guys are not around anymore. They went extinct 11,000 years ago, right around the time humans started to get popular on Earth, when another ice age was ending. In fact, 80% of all mammals that were heavier than 2 pounds disappeared then. The first culprit is, of course, the usual suspect: humans. Around 10,000 years ago, a wave of skilled hunters using distinctive tools like spear points spread across North America. The theory goes that American animals weren't used to this new predator, making them easy targets. Once the big plant eaters started vanishing, the big meat eaters followed. They didn't have enough food to survive, and it wasn't just excessive hunting that caused some damage. Early humans may have also harmed ecosystems in ways that made survival harder for large species. But wait, there's another suspect: climate change. Around the same time, Earth's climate got a major shakeup. The climate was going from super cold to only slightly cold. Just so you know, Earth's temperature was about 46 degrees Fahrenheit, making seasons change and plants perish. And if plants are no longer around, big animals that eat them, like our friends giant sloths, have less nutrition, making them even more vulnerable. Many scientists now think that both human impact and climate change played a role, just in different ways depending on the region. In some places, humans may have tipped the balance. In others, nature itself did the job. Either way, it was a perfect storm that ended the age of giants. Turns out, being huge isn't always a plus. Giant animals tend to live longer and reproduce slowly, which makes them sitting ducks when disaster strikes. Besides, it takes a long time for these guys to bounce back. After dinos disappeared, for example, it took 15 million years for new mega mammals to stomp onto the scene. The last major extinction happened around 12,000 years ago. Not really enough time for brand new massive beasts to evolve. Today's biggest ground animals, like elephants, rhinos, and bison, aren't newcomers. They're actually the tough survivors of that ancient chaos. And, well, at least we still live alongside the blue whale, the biggest mammal ever. But why did some prehistoric animals get so gigantic in the first place? Well, being big has some perks, in spite of all the extinction thing. It keeps you safe from predators and helps you win the fight for food. If plant eaters bulked up, predators had to level up too, just to keep up. And the environment plays a big role. You see, cold-blooded animals might grow bigger in hot places to stay cool, and warm-blooded giants thrive in cold places to stay warm. One paleontologist even suggested that some dino-sized vegetarians needed those massive bellies just to digest the tough, woody plants of their time, as if they had a salad bar inside their bodies. There's also the thing with oxygen. Back then, Earth's atmosphere had way more of it. That's a big deal, especially for creatures with less efficient breathing systems like insects. Higher oxygen levels meant their bodies could handle more growth and more activity, kind of like nature's turbo mode. We also have to discuss bones, specifically the lighter ones. Many huge dinosaurs had air sacs built into their skeletons, just like modern birds. This made their bones strong but not ridiculously heavy, meaning they could grow super tall or long without collapsing under their own weight. Those air sacs also helped with cooling down, which is super important when you're basically a walking oven of muscle. On the flip side, modern mammals are limited by gravity and biology. Bigger bodies need stronger hearts, lungs, and blood pressure just to keep functioning, and land doesn't offer much support. This also explains why whales got even bigger than dinosaurs. The ocean acts like a natural support system, which pretty much means that buoyancy helps hold up all that mass. So blue whales can hit a jaw-dropping 330,000 pounds without turning into pancakes. On land, that kind of size would be a serious health hazard. So ancient giants weren't just freaks of nature. They were the result of the right mix of air, food, physics, and environment working together in just the right way. The whole extinction event surely is a bummer for giant sloths that worked as gigantic engineers of nature, but it surely prevented us from sharing the planet with insects the size of crows, like some types of griffinflies or millipedes reaching almost 6 feet in length. Yikes! Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to appreciate modern sloths. Slow, small, and thankfully incapable of terraforming the landscape and giving me insect-related panic attacks. Tunnels, metro, underground systems, and even secret passageways to the houses of the rich and famous. Why else do we need tunnels, you may wonder? To hide. Many cities have underground tunnels and even underground doppelgangers. Now let's make it clear. Those passages are normally not connected, contrary to the popular rumor claiming that it was possible to get from Scotland to Turkey using underground passageways built around 5,000 years ago. I mean, it sounds insane even today. Imagine building it back in the day. These tunnels have an official name, the Erdstall Tunnels, and they were most likely built in the Middle Ages. However, we still don't have the exact information about the date. The highest concentration of those tunnels are in Bavaria, Germany, but there are many of them in Great Britain and France too. Erdstall tunnels, a unique type of earthen passage found globally, are characterized by their narrow, oval-shaped corridors and tight choke points, known as schlups, or slip-outs. Despite speculation, their purpose remains a mystery. However, some of those tunnels have fireplaces and even vents, which might mean those were used primarily for shelter. Dating back to the Middle Ages, possibly as early as the 12th century, Erdstall tunnels lack archaeological signs and historical records, so it's not a surprise that there are many rumors about their use. Some scientists are sure those were storage spaces, though their narrowness makes this impractical. Another idea is that they provided hiding spots for farmers during tribal raids. However, their single entry point raises doubts about their effectiveness in evading threats. Now, if you're feeling like Indiana Jones and want to venture into those tunnels, you're in luck. A few structures, like the Erdstall Radkobluken in Austria, welcome visitors to explore these enigmatic structures. Most of them are closed to the public eye, though. The origins of Erdstall tunnels remain largely unknown, just like their real functions. And if you think, hey, it's the 21st century here, we can study pretty much everything, well, you're wrong. What makes these tunnels hard to study are the tight confines. Traditional surveying methods often prove inadequate in such spaces. To solve this problem, scientists use a handheld device that integrates an RGB camera, a gyroscope, and high-resolution depth sensors, allowing them to capture intricate details of the tunnels. They also use modern techniques like 3D surveying in hopes of uncovering the true origins and purposes of those tunnels. One hypothesis even suggests they may have been poorly conceived dwellings, abandoned when their inadequacies became apparent. Still, not everyone quite agrees with this idea. Other theories suggest they served spiritual purposes, while the most intriguing idea speculates that those tunnels may be remnants of extraterrestrial civilizations. Experts believe they may have been used for practical matters, such as granaries or hiding spots from looters. As we don't have exact info on who built it and when, it may be pretty much anyone, even a sloth. Nope, I'm not a lunatic. Sloths can build giant tunnels. Check this out. In 2009, a farmer in southern Brazil was driving his tractor through a cornfield when it suddenly sank into the ground. He quickly discovered he had broken through the top of an underground tunnel. When researchers came to investigate, they found a tunnel around 6.5 feet high and the same 6.5 feet wide, extending about 50 feet long, right beneath the farmer's house. When they looked closer, they instantly saw deep claw marks on the walls. That was the proof the tunnel wasn't human-made. So that thing the farmer uncovered was a megafauna paleoburrow, a prehistoric tunnel dug by ancient creatures like giant ground sloths or giant armadillos from over 10,000 years ago. I know, it's hard to imagine those beasts, but let me help you. Take a hamster. Now, increase it to the size of an elephant. Don't forget, this 13-foot tall hamster could also walk on 2 legs. During their time, around 15 million to 10,000 years ago, many species of sloths and giant armadillos roamed the Americas, some even digging similar tunnels. Today, many of these tunnels are filled with sediment, though some remain clear, similar to the one the farmer discovered. This 2009 find sparked significant interest, leading to the discovery of over 1,500 paleoburrows across southern Brazil, making it the era with the highest concentration of such sites worldwide. But no one knows exactly why there are so many of them in southern Brazil. While some paleoburrows exist throughout South America, none have been found in North America, which is weird since those huge sloths roamed the entire continent. The exact purpose of these large tunnels remains a mystery, but scientists believe they may have served as nursing spaces, temperature regulation, or hibernation areas. Tunnels likely developed over centuries as successive generations of sloths and armadillos expanded them. Now, let's take a look at fugus. No, not the Japanese fatal delicacy, and no, not a town in New Guinea. To see them, we gotta travel to the UK. So fugus are underground structures too, but they don't look exactly like tunnels. They are dry stone structures. They look as if a cave had been decorated with stones from the inside. There are only around 15 of them found so far, and most of them are located in Cornwall. According to the estimates, those tunnels were built about 2,400 years ago, and they're still in pristine condition, which is truly fascinating. I mean, back in the day, people had no cool machinery whatsoever, yet their structures still last. And if you dare to buy an apartment today, well, chances are you won't be too happy about the quality. Going back to our fugus, there's nothing extraordinary about their supposed purpose. They could be used for spiritual purposes, as a place to hide, or a food storage. The latest application, though, is a bit weird. I guess it's not a secret for anyone that England is famous for its excessive humidity. And if you want to store your food properly, you gotta avoid the humidity at all costs. Otherwise, say welcome to mold and fungi. But ancient people weren't dull-witted at all, or they wouldn't have survived, and you and I wouldn't be around now. So they might have adapted those fugus to store just some products, those that already had natural molds in them, assisting in the preservation of perishable food, like milk, butter, and cheese. But hey, those are just speculations. The true reason why they were built remains unknown. What makes fugus unique is that they are intentionally built tunnels, not just excavated mines like those in Wales. They were crafted by digging deep trenches, lining them with stone slabs, covering them with capstones, and then filling over them, all of which took significant time and effort. Still, no matter how hard those were to construct, cities around the globe are often built over intricate tunnel systems, each unique to its location. For instance, Paris is famous for its extensive underground quarries, which were abandoned years ago, but still pose a risk of collapse in certain areas above. London boasts one of the largest tunnel networks in the world, including many that were specifically created for military purposes. In New York City, there are rumors of secret tunnels. while Los Angeles has old tunnels from the Prohibition era used for speakeasies. Many other cities also have their share of enigmatic tunnels, and surprisingly, Florida is no exception. It happened in the year 2011 in Yabor City. Near a former post office, flooding uncovered something weird, a section of an unknown structure. Back then, people didn't pay much attention to that, so it took another 7 years to discover something truly fascinating. This historic neighborhood was founded in the 1880s, but it remained unknown until 2018 that it also has a hidden tunnel network. We only learned of it because of renovation work. The exact purpose, of course, is unknown, but most scientists are pretty sure that they serve to connect to early gaming spots and the port of Tampa. Figuring out how extensive the tunnel network is tricky. In 2018, a historic home in Seminole Heights revealed locked doors leading to tunnels from the 1920s. One local even said he traveled through a tunnel for 20 minutes. Rumors suggest some tunnels connect to the Hillsborough River and Yabor City. Research is ongoing, but no new info has emerged yet.
Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, two sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same two flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena-Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpena-Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. there are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo Petri. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo Petri is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo Petri itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yanuguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yanuguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yanuguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience. Scientists just uncovered what's basically Earth's own version of a dinosaur fossil hidden deep under the ocean near Easter Island. It's like finding a time capsule from 200 million years ago, revealing secrets of our planet's very ancient history. Earth's surface is made up of giant pieces, like puzzle pieces, called tectonic plates. These plates are slowly moving around all the time. Under these plates, there is a super hot layer called the mantle, and this layer is what helps the plates move. In September 2024, a team of geologists finally published the groundbreaking discovery that mentioned this ancient megastructure. This old piece of ocean floor might be connected to why the ocean floor is spreading apart faster in some places than in others. To figure this out, scientists used sound waves, known as sonars, to create a sort of map of what's happening deep underground. What they found was weird. There's a blob of stuff under the Nazca Plate, a plate near South America, that's moving much slower than it should be. Now, normally, when plates move, some of the material sinks into the Earth like a conveyor belt. But in this case, it's going slower than expected, like it's getting stuck on something. That something could be an ancient part of the ocean floor that got pushed down into the Earth about 250 million years ago. This discovery is like finding a fossil deep inside the Earth that shows us what things were like a really long time ago. When the ocean floor spreads apart, it's because two tectonic plates are moving away from each other. In the middle of the ocean, there's a long crack or ridge when this happens, kind of like a seam in the Earth. As the plates pull apart, hot melted rock called magma from deep inside the Earth bubbles up through this crack. When the magma hits the cold ocean water, it cools down and hardens, creating a new crust. This process keeps pushing the plates further apart. This process is also known as the Earth's mantle's recycling system. It's like the Earth keeps generating its own mantle constantly. On the surface, this process can cause earthquakes, underwater volcanic eruptions, and the formation of new land, sometimes even creating volcanic islands over millions of years. The cracks where this spreading happens are called ocean ridges, and one of the most famous ridges is the one we're talking about now, the East Pacific Rise. It's famous because it's spreading faster than most ones. This new discovery helps to explain why this may be so. You see, this huge megastructure sort of serves as a time capsule. Since the Earth's mantle is constantly changing and being created, finding a fossilized version of it is making scientists go bananas. It shows us what Earth looked like millions of years ago, back when the continents were in different places and our buddies dinosaurs roamed the planet. This ancient chunk of ocean floor also helps us understand how tectonic plates have moved through history. Although we usually hear and talk about Pangaea, the first supercontinent to exist on Earth was actually called Valbara. The shifting and moving of these tectonic plates are actually what gave rise to the continents we know and live in today. This huge fossil can also help to improve our knowledge of the so-called Earth's mantle's recycling system. By learning how this huge piece of crust got stuck and slowed down, scientists can better predict things like volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. Plus, it might even help us understand how other planets, like Mars or Venus, work beneath their surfaces. Well, I'd say science has a lot on its plate now. Pun intended. Other surreal stuff is constantly being found at the bottom of the oceans, seas, and lakes. Like this underwater Stonehenge, scientists discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretched for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the edge of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to discover this back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand what the site was actually used for. What they know until now is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 man-made stone cairns submerged under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the work of several villages, and that the cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge, some of them are several dozen feet wide, and they can build up to 6 feet. The site probably dates back to 5,500 years ago. Now, it's no coincidence that scientists are calling this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3,100 BCE. And also, both sites carry the distinct characteristics of stone monuments built in a circular format. Let's say they're like cousins. Meanwhile, in 2007, archaeologists found what looks like another mini version of Stonehenge underneath Lake Michigan. It's about 40 feet underwater, and this circle of stones is believed to have been created by indigenous people. They would have built it during the last ice age, when the lake wasn't even filled with water. The rocks are about 4 feet tall, and one of them might even have a carving of a mastodon, which was a huge elephant-like animal that lived more than 10,000 years ago before going extinct. If the carving is real, it could help scientists figure out just how old this site really is. What makes this even more mysterious is that nobody knows why the rocks were arranged in this way. But since a similar stone structure was found on Beaver Island nearby, experts think it's no accident. They were definitely placed there on purpose. The stones form 2 rings. The outer one is about 40 feet wide, and the inner one is about 20 feet wide. All the rocks are made from local granite, and they've been down there for around 9,000 years, which makes this one of the oldest structures in North America. To give you an idea of how ancient that is, these stones were set up long before the famous Stonehenge in England, which wouldn't be built for another 4,000 years. Now, all the way over in Japan, this mysterious structure was unearthed. At first, it looks like an underwater Machu Picchu. The site is filled with a huge pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Behold, the Yanuguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 football fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising structure is its expansive terraces that host large crowd gatherings. Explorers and scientists believe that Yanuguni dates back to 10,000 years ago. But whether it is a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologists, Yanuguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. This guy has dived into exploring the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. The triangle pool, located on the monument's surface, is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure, which has an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age dates back to 10,000 years ago. However, not all scientists are convinced of this explanation. For many, Yanuguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it is not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation occurrence in Northern Ireland known as Giant's Causeway. A series of interlocking basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they were the result of volcanic activity in the region. London, a bustling city of contrasts that never sleeps. Life is in full swing there, both on the surface, with almost 10 million people dwelling there, and underneath it. Now don't get me wrong, London rent did go crazy over the last few years, but people haven't started living underground, at least not yet. But it's safe to say there are actually 2 Londons. You know, the one with Big Ben, the Tower of London, and Greenwich, and secret tunnels and forgotten spaces that lie deep beneath the bustling streets of the city have something to show you too. It all starts with a white, unassuming door. To find it, you need to head to the eastbound platform of the Chancery Lane station on the London Underground. It doesn't seem to be hiding a big deal of secrets, but those who can open it know that behind it lies a maze of tunnels. Who knows, maybe this is the reason why Chancery Lane was closed a staggering 48 times from January to August 2023. And in 2022, it had 137 closures. That's more than a third of the entire year. They say the closures were due to all sorts of reasons, like staff shortages, naughty trespassers, and weather. But hey, it's a bit suspicious. So, the tunnels. They were built in the 1940s as shelters, later repurposed for cloak and dagger activities, storage of top-secret documents, and even telecom services. Rumor has it that the hotline between the most powerful states ran directly through these tunnels. These are called the Kingsway Exchange Tunnels, and they're located 130 feet below street level in central London, underneath High Holborn. It used to be very secret-y. Ian Fleming, the guy who created James Bond and actually spent some time working at that place, got inspired by it and created the whole Q operations in the James Bond movies. The General Post Office took over in 1949, and by 1956, it turned into the place where the first transatlantic telephone cable terminated. Over the years, it was home to post office engineers and radio interference investigators. The place even had the deepest bar in the UK. It used to serve drinks for the big shots, but it's closed now. The thing is, by the 1990s, it had been mostly abandoned due to asbestos and other safety concerns. But you may get the chance to sip a drink at Britain's deepest licensed bar pretty soon. Here's the deal. In 2023, the London Tunnel swooped in to save the day. They bought the tunnels and have big plans to turn them into an interactive cultural experience for the public. With a projected opening in 2027, this place is set to become a hotspot for history buffs and curious adventurers alike. And let's not forget the cool entrances, from a secret shopfront on High Holborn to a mysterious goods lift on Furnival Street. Sadly, the entrance at Tooks Court is no more, but hey, that just adds to the mystery, right? Now, if you don't feel like waiting for several years to visit the Neither London, there's another way of seeing the other side of the city. Now, there's a small downside to it, as the tour might be a little, stinky. Do you know that beneath the streets of London, there is a maze of 1,200 miles of brick tunnels for raw sewage? That's a whole lot of pipes. And don't forget about the 80 miles of main sewers, big enough to pass for railway tunnels. Back in the day, when London was a hot spot for cholera outbreaks, the city was facing a real crisis. People were falling ill, and no one knew what to do. But the problem was that all the waste that Londoners produced went straight into the Thames, the main source of water in the city. So all the cooking, cleaning, and other activities involving water were done with the Thames' terribly dirty water. Enter Sir Joseph Bazalgette, the man with a plan. This genius engineer designed a new sewage system that saved the day. No more sewage turning the Thames into a cesspool. Bazalgette's pumping stations were like something out of a steampunk novel, massive and magnificent. Fast forward to today, and London's old sewer system is feeling the strain. With the number of people living in the city getting close to 10 million, it's time for an upgrade. That's where the Thames Tideway Tunnel comes in. A super sewer to the rescue. It'll be like a giant underground highway for waste, the construction of which was completed in March of the 2024 year. And while you can't really travel in the Victorian sewage, there is an underground world you can visit in London, but it's not for free. It won't cost you much, just as much as one metro ride. The London Underground is the pioneer of underground railways. Imagine, it's the 19th century and they're building the Metropolitan Railway, the very first underground railway in the world. Sure thing, it used to look very different from those cozy carriages they have in London now. It all started way back in 1863 with wooden carriages and steam locomotives. In the 1900s, things really started heating up underground. The City and South London Railway kicked things off with electric trains, followed by the Waterloo and City Railway, Central London Railway, and Great Northern and City Railway. It was electrification mania down there. The Underground Electric Railways Company of London came onto the scene, bringing to life a bunch of tube lines. For example, the Bakerloo, Piccadilly, and Hampstead lines. Now, the London Underground is affectionately called the Tube because of its tube-shaped tunnels. It's not the only underground-related nickname the Londoners have. When the Central Line Railway was introduced in 1900, it was playfully dubbed the Two-Penny Tube because tickets only cost 2 pennies. And that fun nickname has been with us ever since, adding a little extra charm to our daily commute. More than 1 billion journeys are taken on the London Underground every year. That's over 5 million journeys each day. Surprisingly, the biggest part of the Underground isn't actually underground. Out of the 270 stations, only 45% are below the surface. Oopsies, turns out it's not that neither London I was talking about. Whatever. Do you know that the iconic tube map was inspired by a circuit board? Harry Beck, the designer, broke the map mold and created a cool and colorful diagram that still helps us navigate the Underground today. The tube is quite royal as well. Queen Elizabeth II was the first royal to ride the tube in 1969 when she opened the Victoria Line, and she hopped on a few times since then. Every single day, people forget something on the tube. Some weird stuff has been left there over the years: a judge's wig, a prosthetic leg, even an urn of ashes. Oops, did somebody forget Grandpa? Another fun fact is that penalty fares weren't a thing until 1994. Fare dodging used to be a common practice before that, but now those caught are fined £10 on the spot. Also, there's a fake house on the underground track. It's hiding part of the track that was demolished back in 1868 when the district line opened. The neighbors weren't too happy about the gap, so they built a facade to match the rest of the houses on the street. And get this, the shortest distance between 2 adjacent stations is only 850 feet. It's between the Covent Garden and Leicester Square on the Piccadilly line, and it's a super quick journey that's still popular with visitors. The first escalator was introduced at Earl's Court in 1911. People were so scared of it that they didn't trust its safety. Legend has it that a man named William Bumper Harris, with a wooden leg, rode the escalator all day to prove it was safe. Pretty wild, huh?
The conditions on this mysterious island might teach us how we can live on Mars one day. Devon Island is, to this day, the largest uninhabited island on our planet. It's located in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and it's easy to see why people find it impossible to make a home here. The soil stays frozen throughout the seasons. The eastern part of the island is covered by a thick ice cap all year round. Summers here last for less than 50 days, and by summer, I mean that the ground is snow-free and the temperatures are slightly over 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Since almost no plants are growing here, there are no animals that could have adapted to these conditions. That's why scientists compare this island to what it would be like to live on Mars. In 2001, a project started here on Devon Island looking to discover how people might live and work on other planets, particularly on Mars. It's called the Houghton Mars Project and offered NASA scientists some unique studying opportunities. There are few options here in terms of logistics and transportation, and communicating with people living outside the island is also a bit more difficult. Specialists believe that if we can find solutions to live here, we might be able to do it on Mars too. Think of it as a home-based outer space boot camp. The Pitcairn Islands can be found in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If you're a fan of adventures and remote places, this is the place to be. But you'll need to buckle up for quite the ride, since no plane has ever reached this place. The only way to reach the Pitcairn Islands is to take a 32-hour yacht ride. No wonder only 50 people are known to live here. Its history is really interesting too. A group of people settled here in the 18th century after a failed marine mission. To this day, all the residents of the island are descending from that initial group. Life's not easy here, though. If they need to see a doctor, for example, they need to travel either to the island of Fiji or to New Zealand. Now let's head over to Mexico, where recent technology has allowed scientists to explore some fascinating cenotes, which were previously unknown. Cenotes are also called sinkholes and allow us to see subterranean water bodies. A team of archaeologists, cave divers, underwater photographers, and biologists came together to explore and document the extensive network of sinkholes located in the Yucatan Peninsula. One of the hotspots is located under the main pyramid at the Chichen Itza archaeological site. In total, scientists are looking to explore about 6,000 cenotes stretched across this whole region. The whole project is important not only because of the geological discoveries, but also because of its connection to the Mayan people and their culture. These recent discoveries revealed that for the Mayans, these cenotes weren't simple water sources. They dictated the way they built their constructions and had a huge impact on their spiritual lives too. The tallest mountain in the world is Mount Everest, sure, but it's been explored by scientists and tourists alike and doesn't hold many secrets. The mysterious Ganghar Puensum, on the other hand, is the tallest unclimbed mountain on our planet. The reason behind this unusual situation is not because of its remoteness or harsh conditions. Rather, because it's against local legislation to climb it. It's located in the South Asian territory of Bhutan, and the name of the mountain translates to the White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers. Local tradition dictates that mountain peaks shouldn't be available to humans and need to be left to the higher spirits. Mountains in this region can only be climbed up to 3.7 miles, but Ganghar Puensum tops 4.7 miles. For this reason, there's no official record of any human reaching the peak. Almost all of the previous expeditions have been inexplicably stopped at the midpoint. The next unusual spot should be on any travel enthusiast's bucket list, the island of Madagascar. For starters, it's estimated that about 90% of the species of plants and animals that are found here can't be seen anywhere in the world. But there's one small portion of the island that has baffled both tourists and scientists, the Stone Forest. It belongs to the Tsingy de Bemaraha National Park and features some unique limestone formations. They look like thousands of spiky towers that stretch hundreds of feet into the air. The distance between these formations can be anywhere from a few inches to the length of a city street. As beautiful as it is, it's really hard to get here. It'll take you a few days to get there from the nearest city. Once you get to the park, it becomes really difficult to explore too. It can take a whole day to go across as little as half a mile. The word Tsingys itself translates to where one cannot walk barefoot. To visit the remotest village in the whole world, you'll need to prepare yourself for quite the journey. From the United States, for example, the easiest route involves a 15-hour flight to Cape Town, South Africa, followed by a 6-day boat ride to reach Tristan da Cunha. Or you could take a month-long cruise through the South Atlantic Ocean, whatever works better. Planning in advance is a must, since only 9 boat visits are made to the island yearly. It's just 7 miles long and right in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, stretching a mere 37.8 square miles. There are slightly over 200 residents, and they all farm for a living. They do have internet service, but it's really slow. The people living here speak a dialect of English that is used by the fewest number of people in the world. The town of Coober Pedi in Australia is partially underground. It all began back in 1915, when opal deposits were found in the area. To this day, the town is still the biggest opal mine in the world. People living here figured out that it would be more comfortable for them to stick to the underground, as temperatures above ground can reach 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So, the establishment now has underground stores and galleries. Coober Pedi is also home to the world's first 4-star underground hotel. North Sentinel Island, located near India, is another pretty remote place. Not because of the time it takes to get there or the climate, but because it's home to the world's most mysterious tribe. The population living here is estimated to be between 50 to 400 people and isn't known to have any contact with the outer world. This is mostly because locals don't really enjoy visitors and tend to scare them away, even harming tourists. So, to protect them and their obvious wishes, the island is monitored by the local Indian authorities. It's believed the tribe's people don't have any immunity from modern diseases, so being in contact with foreign people might actually be fatal for the locals. On these French islands, there are no native inhabitants. The Kerguelen Islands are part of the Antarctic lands and are home to just scientists that visit on rotation. At any given time of the year, there are no more than 100 people here, and they're mostly engineers and researchers. There's no plane to get you to these islands, and few tourists are known to have visited them. The island is covered in glaciers, and the soil here isn't friendly to plants or animals. But if you're curious about what this place looks like, you'll need both the money and the time to complete the trip. You can only reach the island by ship, which reaches the shores of Kerguelen only 4 times a year. It isn't cheap to stay in these islands, and you definitely won't find 5-star hotels here. The trip departs from Réunion, and it takes about 28 days to reach the first island. Half of the time will be spent at sea, so be prepared to cover over 5,600 miles of the Indian Ocean.